bells toll at midnight. A lone figure drifts through a city silenced by fear. His shape is not human but bird-like, a leather mask stretching forward in a cruel beak. The torchlight glints off dark glass eyes. This was no comfort. It was a warning. Death was here. Europe in 1347 had no defense. The plague swept in from the east, borne on ships that carried grain, rats, and the fleas that fed on them. From the ports of Sicily, it spread like wildfire, a shadow that consumed town after town. Within months, cities collapsed. At first, people whispered of divine punishment. Surely, God had grown weary of sin. Some blamed the stars, others foreign traders, others witches. Yet the truth was crueler. The invisible enemy spared no one. Kings and beggars alike lay gasping in filth. The mask became a grotesque symbol. Stuffed with lavender, rosemary, and myrrh, it was meant to purify poisoned air. The glass lenses gave a hollow gaze, unblinking. To children, it was the face of a nightmare. To the sick, it was the last thing they saw. Inside homes, horror reigned. A father watched his wife's skin bloom with purple blotches. She writhed with fever, swollen lumps in her armpits glistening with pus. He reached to hold her hand, only for her body to shudder once, then fall still. He was alone. The boils swelled to grotesque size, splitting skin. The pus reeked so strongly neighbors blocked their doors with waxed cloth. Victims coughed, choking on their own blood. Many drowned on dry land, their lungs filling with froth. Death was both swift and merciless. Florence recorded days where whole streets were silent. Bodies lay where they fell, dogs licking the sores. Priests refused to enter houses. Mothers abandoned children. Even burial became impossible. Corpses piled high, awaiting carts that never came quickly enough. And then came the pits. Great trenches dug outside city walls. Men heaved bodies by the dozen, stacked like firewood. Lime sprinkled over them to mask the smell. Still the stench rose, thick as smoke. The living trembled to pass the fields of the dead. A chronicler wrote of 3 brothers who sealed themselves in a villa with wine, music, and women to escape the plague. They laughed at the misfortune outside. Yet within weeks, one coughed blood. Another soon followed. The villa fell silent, its doors rotting open. Meanwhile, processions of flagellants marched barefoot through villages. Whipping themselves until blood ran down their backs, they begged God for mercy. Crowds followed, weeping. But mercy never came. The plague struck their camps as cruelly as any city. Blood was answered with blood. In Strasbourg, terror turned to madness. Jews were accused of poisoning wells. Entire communities were dragged to wooden pyres. Flames roared as men, women, and children screamed. The crowd watched in silence, believing they had purged evil. Days later, the plague struck harder. Doctors hid behind their masks. Their cloaks were smeared with wax to repel corruption, gloves to touch nothing bare. With canes, they prodded patients and scribbled names in ledgers. Yet behind the beak they sweated, knowing their herbs could not stop the invisible hand. Imagine their fear. Each time they leaned over a coughing child, each time they touched a pulse, they risked their own lives. Some survived, many did not. The mask gave an illusion of control, but death crept through seams, through gloves, through every breath. The punishment was not only death, but terror itself. Bells tolled endlessly. Carts rattled over cobbles piled with corpses. Sometimes the dead twitched, not yet gone. They were tossed into pits alive, their screams muffled by soil. Neighbors turned away. No one dared stop it. In Siena, a chronicler wrote that the city was left half empty. Fields grew wild, businesses collapsed. Weddings and births ceased. Even the churches, once full of prayers, stood deserted. Death had not only stolen lives, it stole the very rhythm of existence. Children starved as parents rotted in bed. Infants wailed beside lifeless mothers, their cries fading as hunger gnawed them silent. Dogs grew bold, feeding on bodies left in alleys. The line between man and beast blurred in a world ruled by decay. Some tried desperate cures. They drank crushed emeralds, smeared dung on sores, or bled themselves until faint. Wealthy nobles locked themselves away with only servants for company. Yet the plague climbed walls, slipped under gates, and claimed them all the same. And still, rumors spread that foreigners carried poison, that witches brewed storms, that God's angels walked as birds to claim souls. The plague doctor's mask fed the terror, its beak, its glass eyes, its silence. It became not a healer, but a herald of doom. London's narrow lanes choked with filth became breeding grounds. Rats scurried in daylight, fleas leapt unseen. Soon whole parishes vanished. Families boarded their doors with nails sealing themselves in. Days later, the hammering ceased. Only silence remained. One father, desperate, carried his sick daughter to a church door. He laid her on the steps, begging the saints to intercede. By morning, both the girl and the father were dead. Their bodies were carted away with dozens more, dumped into the earth. The horror lingered in memory. The mask became a relic of dread, painted in woodcuts and whispered of for centuries. Whenever plague returned, the figure reappeared, faceless, voiceless, gliding among the dying. To see it was to know your days were numbered. And yet, humanity endured. From ashes, survivors rebuilt cities. But the shadow of the Black Death never lifted. Whole villages erased, entire generations scarred. The mask remained, a cruel reminder that we are fragile, our lives held by forces beyond our control. So now we ask, when terror stalks the streets, do humans turn to compassion or cruelty? The plague showed us both. It birthed savagery and sacrifice, cowardice and courage. The mask itself is less about healing than fear, a face of helplessness eternal. If you heard the bells, smelled the lime, and saw the beaked mask looming in torchlight, what would you have done? Would you have fled, or stayed to die among family? Share your thoughts below, and join me for the next tale, where men's intestines were pulled out alive.